Yep, perfect.
We are now live.
Thank you, Aisha. Welcome everyone to tonight's FBS conversation chat. We call it chat, but it's a conversation. Really, really pleased to have Haesun with us and my co-host Tara, the lovely Tara from Bath. Hi, and Haesun, you're in Toronto, is that right?
That's right. It snowed quite a bit.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah, and then I got my nephews to shovel the snow. I'm good.
Oh wow! So it's very snowy. Yeah. We had a bit of ice last week.
Yeah, and a lot of rain today.
Yeah. So thank you for spending this time with us. I really appreciate it. I always like to know a bit about how our guests came across solution-focused therapy, why it resonated with them, and so that would be a nice place for me to ask you where you first came across this approach and what were you doing at the time?
Oh, what was I doing at the time? You know, I think it was by total accident because I wasn't planning to. I mean, I didn't even know that it existed. So I was doing my master's in adult education, and I was supposed to be in this class called organizational development, and because that's what I studied. So then I was doing this sort of online, I mean, not online, but all day course. I remember that was on a Saturday, and I show up to class and sit there. And professor, actually, he looked like a Freud, right? Sigmund Freud. And then the full class of people. And as we're actually sitting and talking about it, this guy's talking about, setting the goals and having a conversation. I was like, totally makes sense. But then he didn't say anything about organizational development, OD. So then I'm like, okay, this is confusing. I mean, I see how they're all connecting, but then, back then I was a little bit more sort of like linear. Okay, how does it connect to this, to that? So then during the first break, I remember going up to him and I said, Dr. Warner, I love what you're doing here. And I would also like to know how this is all connecting to OD. And he looked so confused and he looked at me and he said, we don't talk about OD here. I'm like, what is this guy talking about? And he then looked at my face and he's like, do you mean overdose? And I thought, what a horrible joke. Like, what is he talking about? Then he actually then looks at me and he said, what class do you think this is? So I say, well, organization development. I'm like, hello. And he's like, oh, you're in the wrong class. They made last minute change of the classrooms and I was sitting in the wrong class, and that was solution focused brief therapy class. And my life changed.
I love that.
Yeah. Oh wow.
I mean, that is a miracle.
That
isn't it?
Isn't it? That was meant to be. Wow.
Yeah, that was neat.
Yeah.
So did you stay, Haesun, in that class, or did you decide to go? Yeah.
It wasn't even open to like non-counseling psychology students, but I said, can you please sign this form? So I actually got to stay, and I was the only non-counseling therapist, whatever student. And I had to drop everything else. I quit my job. And then that's what I followed. It's like, that's the beginning of it. Not intentional, accidental, but it's almost like how, Peter Szabo, he describes it as, it's kind of like those old jacket that you totally forgot that you had, and you put it on. It's like, oh my gosh, this is mine. Yeah. That feel to it, right?
It just felt right. It just felt like the right fit.
Yeah.
Wow.
Brilliant.
And what about you, actually? I'm so curious about you.
So how we came across it?
Yeah.
Yeah. We me and Aisha were delivering it was like a conference event on child to parent abuse in a small town in Bedfordshire called Luton. And someone came up to us in the break and just said, have you heard of solution focused brief therapy? I said, well, not really. So I was curious enough to, when I got back, to look into it. And just like you, I felt, surely this is what our clients want. They want to leave with some kind of direction, some kind of hope. And what we were doing before that was so problem saturated and difficult and stressful for everyone involved. And we had Harvey Ratner came to to our office for 2 days, and we done the 2-day training. I loved it straight away because, like you said, it felt like an old jacket. It felt like the right thing to do. And I think you get those moments, don't you, where you think this is the right path for whatever reason. The same reason you never left that. You could have gone to your organizational development, and I'm guessing if you'd have left that, your path would have been completely different. I don't know.
I actually think so. And, I just love how when you kind of meet something that you just know, and then you need to pursue something, and then Harvey comes and, spends time. And for me, I think it was also Chris Iverson. He was here for a couple of days, and I was thinking, what's wrong with these guys? I mean, they're just going around the world ruining people's lives, because after they left, I was thinking about this for like years to come.
Rob Black was the person that, on my social work degree, he we did study solution focused approach as part of it, but it was a really, really small aspect of our social work training. And then Rob came in and did a couple of hours of a seminar, and that was it. And and then I kind of lost my way a little bit, but then came back to it and ended up working with Rob in a social work team. And so it's like we're meant to be together and meant to be doing the solution focused approach.
Wow. And Aisha, what about you? Because clearly you're a professional drummer before this life.
She's a rock star.
Thank you, Haesun. I don't know why you're laughing, guys.
No,
Very serious. You are very good.
I know. I was with Joe at the conference, delivering the conference, but when I actually didn't like the solution focused approach. In fact, I thought it was a waste of time and ridiculous. And why the hell have we just spent all this money bringing down someone from brief when I could have been doing something totally different, like washing my hair?
I love your honesty.
I didn't like it, and it was not until we can tell. I followed Joe around, so he booked on more brief training, and we went, and I was just sitting there with the amp. But then Elliot came in as a guest visitor, and as soon as he started speaking, I went, "Oh, I get it." The penny just dropped. It was his delivery. It just dropped. And then I didn't have the confidence to use it until I walked into the office one day and Joe was delivering a full solution focused session. And I just sat there. I didn't ask for the parents' permission. I just sat there. And I was like, okay, I can see the benefits of this. Yeah, all right, I get it. But I was a hater. I was ready to go on social media and diss it.
Love that. Yeah. Oh my gosh, look at you. And when did you first notice the confidence to actually do it?
About I'd say about a year later for the full where I felt actually I am a solution focused practitioner.
Wow.
But you never stop growing, do you? You never stop learning. And my practice has become so much better since, I know this is really sad to say, since the lockdown, since COVID. Because we've been meeting Tara, with you, with Pamela King, with so many different people. And just those conversations and those networking events and training, you just pick it up without even realizing. And you develop a new language that you thought, I cracked before. But actually, in hindsight, looking back, I'm a much better practitioner today than I was last year.
Yeah, well, I think the opportunities that have come out of COVID, the online world and just the access to the solution focused world, which is so giving and generous anyway, but it's just been amazing the amount of things that you can participate in. And I feel the same, that I've just grown and learned so much, and getting to meet people like you, Haesun, it's just
I'm so happy.
So when you left this conference that you shouldn't have been at for some reason, I don't know.
Joe really wants to know about this conference, Haesun.
You went to the wrong room, whatever it was, but you left there and something changed for you. How did it change the direction that you were going to work in or move towards?
Joe, it's interesting. It was actually a class, one of the courses that people are doing during the master's program. So it was at my school. And what was so interesting is, and this is why I still do this practice of baseline. So there's this idea of doing a baseline, right? So I remember this professor actually asking us to record our sessions. I'm like, oh my gosh, no, we're not going to do that. So we did audio recording at the time. And I still have it, by the way, after how many years, I don't know. I still have that audio recording. And it's horrifying. So whenever I feel like I'm full of myself, I listen to it. And wow. Right? Yeah. So we have that audio recording, and the better, as you're saying, Aisha, we keep growing. The more, I thought I knew everything I had to know about solution focus like 10 years ago. And then I still find myself growing every single conversation that I look at. It's like, oh, I didn't know that. Even yesterday, I was looking at this transcript. I'm still learning from it. So having this baseline as your own standard, there are different ways of, let's say, assessing your performance as a therapist or as a coach or as a teacher. And I think what's popular is people do norm referenced. So out of 24 people in class, this is the norm and this is your rank is one way. Which is really popular in schools. Another way of assessing is criteria referenced, which is, okay, here are core competencies, and you need to show these core competencies. Now, that's another popular one, especially like professionalizing the field. But I think, especially, being mindful of how we learn the solution focus to begin with, I think we really need to look at what we do, then learn from our own work. Right. So, and I think in adult education, we call it ipsative. It's ipsative assessment. So you become your own baseline and you are your own standard. So I think that's something that completely changed in the way that I actually teach. So, I was always in adult education field, and that's a huge change in me, learning solution focused.
Yeah. I did course with Alfie and Dominic last year, the microanalysis of face-to-face dialogue, and through Alfie and Dominic was where they introduced me to you and the quadrant as well, and that doing the microanalysis course, I hadn't done that before. I hadn't looked at that level of in any detail really, and I'd always been sort of like, oh gosh, recording sessions, particularly because I work with children and young people, getting permissions for that, and but actually it's fine. You can do it. And having done that microanalysis course, learned about microanalysis, and has completely changed my practice. So yeah, I'd love to hear more from you about microanalysis and the quadrant at some stage as well.
You already passed the microanalysis by being able to say without, stuttering, microanalysis of face-to-face dialogue. If you can say that.
Yeah. I was practicing a lot before.
We were on the phone for a good hour,
microanalysis.
I knew it. That came out way too natural. Wow. I think, in a way, probably, Tara, you experienced that power. You know, I remember that conference, I think that was in Banff, 2000 and I don't know, 12, 10. And that's when Peter DeYoung and Janet Babalas, they actually did what do you call it? The keynote in the beginning.
The
And
plenary,
they did it on, plenary. And they did it on microanalysis. And it completely just like, I was just so taken aback looking at it. It's like, oh my gosh. And then I looked around, it's like, people, this is amazing. And I was completely, it's like, this is incredible. And I remember going to the washroom and I heard some people saying, I don't know how this is relevant to our work. I'm like, are you kidding? What do you mean? But then I think sometimes microanalysis could be as like, okay, this is all theoretical. I don't understand the application. But if you actually know how to use it, I think this is a tremendous tool.
Mm-hmm.
And especially, it makes you an observer of your own work, right? A lot of times when we watch our own tapes, we're kind of like, oh, what are we looking at? I mean, you look at yourself like, oh my gosh, I look so pale. I mean, why is it so bright in my room? Versus when you're looking at your tape, there are some things that you look at. So I remember Jennifer Gerwing is one of the microanalysis, my heroes. And we were sitting down at one of the SFPTA conferences, and just, you know, these conversations that happen over dinner, right? Mind-blowing, world-shifting conversations for me. And she's like, you know, I think microanalysis really gives you a way to attend to your clients in a visible way. And I'm like, oh my gosh, say that again. Let me get my pen and paper. And her comment about the quadrant was, she feels that the quadrant is getting closer to the heuristics of studying interactions. And I think that's the moment that shifted for me, that she is looking at the quadrant as we are actually giving people a heuristic, like a tool that they can use to learn. And what you're studying is not questions, not what you say, but what they do. So interaction is what we're studying. So for example, oftentimes I hear, Aisha, you probably might have heard that too, that solution-focused conversation is about asking questions. And that's what I believed for the longest time. I even like handed out question cards. But then realizing that it's sometimes it's nothing to do with the questions, actually. It's about interactions that you have. And it's not about what you say, what they say, but what you say does to the interaction. It's not about what do you do, but what does that do? So looking at the functions rather than the forms of communication. I think that was my big aha, having conversations with people like that.
Oh, she's wonderful.
Can you
Oh, Aisha, you cracked me up for some reason.
Yeah.
You just want me to play the drums, Haesun.
Come on.
Okay.
I think you should sing, Aisha.
I can sing, but there'll be we'll do a runner.
Just
Joe's trying to keep it serious, ladies. Have you read
no. I'm just trying to think. Microanalysis sounds so scientific. It sounds like a scary concept. That word, just that word in itself. And there will be people watching this that have no clue what that is. So how does that inform a session? How does it, by looking at those minute interactions, help us to, I don't know, to move forward, to be practitioners? Do you know what I mean? I'm not saying I don't agree with you, because in sessions I sometimes hear a different word that the client has never said before. So with a young person and their parent, when they first come in, it's she, and then suddenly they start to say mum, and it's a tiny word, and you pick up on it, but you don't actually. Do you know what I mean? It just feels better.
I love that.
So I'm just wondering, what is microanalysis in a nutshell?
That's a very good question, Joe. You know, I'm not sure what it is, but I kind of know what it does.
Mm.
You know, when we talk about meanings transform through conversations, microanalysis makes it visible. And I think that's what it does. Well, what is it? I think it's a research tool. And I think what it does is making the interaction actually visible, because microanalysis can be as micro as you want it to be or as macro as you want it to be. So, for example, when you are thinking, okay, what should I actually say here, is one curiosity, but another curiosity is, how do I know that what I say is effective? Well, you don't know that by looking at what you say. You know that by looking at the effect of what you say, which is the client's response. But then there's a third step to that. Third step is, after the client responds, then what do you do? And that is continuous. Like, you know, here's what the client says, and here's what I say. So here's what they do, here's what I do, and here's what I do does to what they do. And it's a continuous thing. But since we're not parrots, there are some parts that we choose to respond to, and those some parts that we select to respond to becomes a mutual understanding. You and I both agree that Aisha is an amazing drummer. Okay, we all agree to. And she keeps saying that people will actually make donations to like make her stop singing, which I don't know. But then, when you have conversations, these mutually agreed upon content accumulates, and you can actually see how that happens through studying what's happening in that moment, right? So that you sort of know what clients mean by what they say at what given point, because there's this understanding that specific words contain specific meanings, and that's not what we find when we actually look at interactions, right? So I think that's what it does, Joe. Like, it makes our interactions visible.
And Mark has just asked a question, but it hasn't popped up here. So, are you conscious of the concept of microanalysis in a conversation?
Ooh.
So
that's such a great question.
I told him to ask that question.
No, I did.
Sorry, Mark.
You know, interesting. I think what I am very mindful is this. I just got off, from a class that I just did, and they asked me this question. And this is a group that is slightly inflicted by this idea of questioning. So sometimes people still think, before they learn solution focus, they think it's all about questions, so questioning. So then they ask, what are some questions that we need to remember? And, I thought about, what do I actually do in my session? And I think there's one question that I sort of have in my mind is, what do they say that they might want? And that's just one question that I keep playing in my head. What did I just hear them say that they actually might want? And that's just one thing that I have in my mind. And that has a lot to do with the quadrant. Quadrant is informed by microanalysis. So it's looking at positive content and negative content. And there's a timeline, because people usually have timeline in their storyline. So when you kind of put them together, it becomes a listening map. It's not a questioning map. It's a listening map.
Yeah.
So in a traditional, not traditional, but in a typical sense, when I work with a quadrant as a like note-taking tool, sometimes I do that with my client on a whiteboard. And when we do that, I don't necessarily put down what I ask. I put down what they say. It's a listening tool, because what clients say is what we are responding to. So what I am very mindful of is, what did I hear the person just say? Not what do I think that they said, but what did I actually hear them say that they might want? And that really helps me throughout, especially some difficult sessions.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I think definitely since doing the microanalysis course, and listening, I think is such a huge, I see the solution focused approach very much as a listening approach rather than a questioning approach. And I think when you use microanalysis and when you look at your own practice in that detail and you see yourself when you're listening, and those power of those kind of listening responses, I think it's really fascinating to watch that in a solution focused conversation. So yeah, I love that, that emphasis on listening, I think is so key, and that was most definitely heightened for me through learning about microanalysis.
Yeah, right. I mean, if we were not listening, there's no miracle questions, there's no scaling question. I mean, we were listening.
Yeah.
So,
I'd love
so what
to
is
hit.
the,
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, go on. No, I was just gonna say, what is this quadrant? It sounds.
I was
wonderful.
just about to ask about more.
Sorry,
about
Tara,
the
go ahead.
quadrant. Yes, I would love to know more about how the quadrant came about, and also something that I've, since being introduced by Elfie and Dominic to your quadrant, I've really started using it in my training, and I've started with training people to be solution-based practitioners, but also thinking about it within sort of family interactions as well, in everyday conversations, something that Elfie and I've been talking about a lot. So I'd be really interested to know about that in your own family life and everyday interactions.
Oh my gosh, is this the right time to ask that? Phew,
I
I just had a bit of an argument. Oof.
Is that okay to ask that?
Oh, well, we'll see. We'll see what comes out.
Yeah.
What's interesting is the quadrant came out of a few iterations. I mean, it was so funny. Peter DeYoung, when he came here back in 2014 or 15, he actually did coaching session with me. He coached me. And that's where I was talking about, I'm so unhappy with how solution focus is taught. And I lament about how, we seem to be robbing people of the experience of how we discovered solution focused. So it felt like we somehow learned by listening to our clients about what seems to be useful for them. But then now we have this like clean cut formula. And now we take it to our students and say, learn this. So it was always a bit of, I guess, discontentment as an educator, because my primary field is in adult education. So then I think that was my biggest And then Peter just reminded me of that session because it's video recorded. So then he analyzed it. So we were just talking about how it's been always there as discontentment. And sure enough, I remember that was in 2006, 15 or 16, around the same time. I was teaching in China. And I know I look like I should know Chinese, but I'm Korean, so I don't know Chinese. Okay. So it was, all translated and all those things. And in that gap of translation, I know no Chinese. And they seem to have not a lot of English skills. So I didn't speak the language that they understand and vice versa. So there's a translator. One thing so cool about having a translator is there's a little bit of a gap. So then I'm trying to, this person came and he's asking about, so how are we supposed to, what are we focusing on? And I'm talking about listen, select, build, and they're like, yeah, but then what if the person is always negative? What do I focus on? So having that back and forth. And I was like, okay, here's a thing. And I started to draw, okay, here is the past, the future. And then I remember saying, I didn't even have top to bottom. Here's a past, the future. And where do you focus? Like formula. And then the person says, well, both. And I'm thinking, actually, that's true. Darn it, that's true. And then I remember then asking, okay, so the person is talking about positive things and negative things, because that's from microanalysis. Which one? And he's like, both. And I'm like, shoot, that's true too. So actually in that conversation was actually the quadrant. It's like, okay, so past to future, positive to negative, and all the quadrants are important. And that's how accidentally came up.
I love that.
And it was really fascinating to see how that was put into use right away, because it came out of need and it was co-constructed in that moment. And then, I find it interesting that people often mistake it for the quadrant model as this is about, we can ask these questions in this quadrant. I mean, it doesn't work like that in this model, because it's a listening map. And second one is, especially people who are learning, they are thinking, okay, don't go down to 3 and 4. Don't go below the line. But if you actually study Insu and Steve's tapes, especially, they always make statements, but they do not ignore quadrant 3 and 4. Yeah. And it's funny, they always acknowledge it. But there's a difference between acknowledging and exploring. They acknowledge, but always they explore more about quadrant 2 or quadrant 1. So that was really interesting to see the pattern of formulation and questions. When you're formulating, it could be from 1, 2, 3, 4. But then question was exploring the client's preferred future or resourceful past. So quadrant, very simple map, past to future, timeline. And top to bottom is what they say they want more. And the bottom is what they say that they want less, right?
So how has that quadrant made a difference to your interactions, Tara, with your clients?
Yeah, it's made a really big difference. I think it's just having that. And I think, as Haesun said, particularly sometimes in those more complex or difficult conversations, and also I think trusting in the process, and that what Haesun said about that, that acknowledging those, the past and the more difficult things, and I kind of think it's sort of like a bit of a dance, sort of dancing with the problem, that that a client might kind of move and dance between them, but really trusting in the process. And I think mostly in my training, like using it in my training, it's just and I think because Aisha and James, two of their team, are doing some training with me at the moment, and I shared the quadrant with them there, and thinking about, they were asking about working with particularly complex issues with families, and perhaps where parents in particular they were struggling to get them on board and to engage, and only seeing as the child as the problem, and not necessarily taking any sort of ownership of their contributions, and that could be a really useful tool to show these parents, that I think that could really enable them to see that visual tool could really make a difference.
And I think, Tara, you probably might also notice, this is what I notice when I work with the quadrant. I'm still learning about actually the quadrant too, as I use them and as I hear these stories from other people who are using it, that, I often say this is a napkinable idea, that you can just like take a napkin at Starbucks or something and draw it. And not even the person that I'm talking to, but the person who's overhearing can take it and use it at their work. And that actually happened. We were sitting at Starbucks and I was actually talking to a colleague about it. And somebody who was just sitting there next to us, and we were kind of like chatting beforehand too, but he's like looking at it and he's like, I think I can totally use it at my work. And I said, what do you do? And he happened to be a CEO of a CFO actually at a local hospital. And he said, we have strategic planning meeting coming up next week. I think I'm going to actually flip chart this with my team. And I'm thinking, wow, have fun with it. And I think that portability is something that makes it very sort of simple for people to just make their work a little bit more visible than before. And Tara, you actually asked about my own conversations at home.
Yeah.
Oh shoot. Okay, I needed like wine than water, but okay.
I'll tell you about mine too.
I knew it.
Actually, yeah, I got.
Oh man, these people, you guys are awesome. And
It's +7 here.
yeah, hello, right? It's like only about 2:30 here. But one of the things that I noticed is I was practicing teaching. I was doing everything solution focused. And I think I remember that very, very defining moment for me was when I had to now have solution focused conversation with my family. And I think I was already, having some of those things because I remember as early as like grade 1, age 5, my nephews will come home and, I'm like, hey guys. And they will be like, so what's better today? So I know they pick up. So I'm sure I was doing that with them. But with my parents, it was, a little bit different, I guess. So then it didn't happen until some time ago, 2018, I guess. And that's when actually my dad was diagnosed with lung cancer. And we thought he was coughing a little bit. So we thought, hey, maybe you got to get it checked out for whatever. So we went to see a doctor and they assessed him and took pictures and all those things. And I remember that time I had to be there with them to see this oncologist because they didn't speak English really well. So I had to be there. And that moment of noticing with such heightened sense of everything that is being said. And I remember the time that I'm walking into this doctor's office because we don't know the result. So we're watching for any smallest clues. And this doctor says, hi, good morning, how are you? In such like lovely tone. And I'm like, oh, thank God it's nothing. Okay. So I completely relaxed. Oh, Hugh, we sat down. And then he's like, so how are you doing? How are you feeling? So then by then I was pretty convinced that, okay, this is nothing. Then she's like flipping through the pages. And I even commented on nice shoes. I remember that conversation. And her first word out of her mouth was this, unfortunately. And I thought, wow, what a weird way to start a conversation with your patient, unfortunately. And she announced that your father has stage 4 lung cancer. And for those of you who are listening in, if you're going through an illness in your family or yourself, I mean, you might also experience this heightened sense of the impact of what people say. And I was tormented by that. And not only that, after I heard it for the first time, I felt this tap on my shoulder from my dad, and he says, what did she say?
Gosh.
Now, having to turn around and tell him myself,
oh, Haesun, yeah.
well, that was tough. And like holding it together for them, for the family, and then coming home, sitting in the living room, and now having to have some conversation, we don't know where to begin. Now I teach solution focus everywhere. And then what am I doing at home? So I'm sitting there, and then my dad says, do you think if I actually went to the doctor earlier, they would have actually found it? And I'm thinking, okay, that's a regret. So I'm doing quadrant analysis right there. It's not funny. That's a regret. And then he says, so how long do you think I might have? Do you think I have a year, 6 months? And then I thought, okay, that's a dread. Quadrant 4. Without knowing I was doing that. And then I couldn't say anything. And then he says, I just wish I have just 2 more years. And then I thought, okay, that's quadrant 1. And then I said, okay, Dad, Dad, suppose you have 2 more years. And I'm sure you do. What would you do with that? And that's the defining moment for me. As somebody who's now having that weighty conversation with my own family. And he looked at me, he said, well, I don't know. I would take your mom to different places in the world that I promised her like 48 years ago when we got married. that he promised my mom that he's going to take her to all these graveyards of like people who, like Mozart, Hemingway, all these people, to pay his tribute. And he said he would do that. And I said, what else? And he said, well, I always wanted to see you actually teach or speak. I've never been to your speaking, so I would love to see you speak. So we generated some ideas about that. And then for the following 18 months, he actually got to take my mom back to their honeymoon place. And they took a photo at the exactly same spot. And then also we got to travel to so many places. And I mean, just so many memories of Vienna, for example. He was standing right in front of like Beethoven, for example, and he was mumbling something. And I approached him. I said, what are you saying, Dad? And he's like, he looked at me. He's like, it's none of your business. And I remember, like, he doesn't speak German, he doesn't speak like other languages, but then somehow he managed to buy like bouquet of roses, and he actually placed those roses in front of them, and he said something and having conversations. I got to witness that, although my dad called it a tomb tour, which is morbid, but that's okay. And I think somehow that night, having that conversation, you know, I always talk about this because this really moves me to my core still, is, you know, I was actually invited to speak at one of the conferences that hosted by Harvard University. Big deal, I think. And then I was telling my dad, he's like, I would love to be there. I said, okay, let's take a road trip. And we took a road trip, and, you know, they were sitting in the audience, hundreds of people, and they're all the way at the back. And I'm speaking about this and that and quadrant. And then I told the story of my dad, and nobody knows that he's there. So I told them a story of my, you know, that conversation that evening. And then I introduced my parents and I said, please stand up. And they stood up. The entire room turned around. They stood up. Standing ovation for 3 solid minutes. That really came out of that conversation. So that's the power, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I experienced at my home.
So beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And I just wanted to kind of add, well, can't really add to that, but something from my own experience of using the quadrant and the difference that it makes, in particular in the interactions with my teenage son. Just, you know, and, you know, it really has changed. And I, you know, more and more I've spoken about the quadrant, in particular with Elfie, but the more visible it is at moments, you know, at times when, I think the conversation could have gone in a different direction, but the quadrant helps it to be a little bit more balanced.
Sometimes though, like my nephews, for example, they know this thing, like solution focused thing, and then they just got their report card, and I mean, they got C in their French. And I know in theory, oh yeah, how did you manage to get this A in your other? I don't care. He got C. So I'm like, so what is this thing? Actually, he got A, B, A, B, A, B, and that's the only C. And I know in my theory, but I'm like, okay, listen, come here, Jeremy. What is this C? And then, you know what? He looked at me and he said, but I actually got a D last time. And he's like, so I improved. How about that? And I couldn't say anything to that. I was like, okay, you know what? Good job.
Yeah. He already knew. He already knew where the conversation was going. So I was a little bit better than last time. Yeah.
I wasn't really going there, but you did.
Thank you for sharing that story. Aisha was in tears. She won't admit it, but I
I
can
wasn't
see
in
by her
tears.
face. Yeah.
Beautiful story.
Shut up! I don't
Yeah.
cry.
Yeah. Because we were the me and Aisha were often, because we're in the office late, and we'll have dinner at the office, and for
You
some
never
reason
leave the
tonight,
office.
No, we don't have the office.
I don't think you sleep either.
and we were talking about teachers. You know, when we look back from our childhood, and those teachers that just stood out, that inspired you to want to learn, and those that, although they had the strictness and you didn't misbehave, it turned you off a subject completely. And what was that magic ingredient? Because there was, we still remember them now, and I guess we hope as practitioners that the conversations we have with our people will be something that they remember looking back and thinking that was a turning point for me. Because I know since lockdown, Haesun, we've had a lot of Zoom calls, and sometimes they're recorded with the client's permission. And sometimes I look back at them and I think, Jesus, that was awful. Why did I ask that question? That was so terrible. But then I don't know the outcome of that until I meet them next time.
Oh, I love that.
Because
Yes.
sometimes an awful question can turn out to be actually. I thought about what you said. I didn't particularly like it at the time, but they've made amazing changes. And sometimes you can have a conversation which you think has been fantastic. Oh, everything's roses, and then it just falls flat on its face. It's that. I suppose it's that. How much? Because the story you were telling earlier was how welcoming the doctor was and the smile on her face, and you immediately felt that this was going to be good news. And I know from the training we have, body language was something that was really pushed to the side a bit, and emotions sometimes. So when we look at these tapes, it's not just what we're saying. Should we be looking at body language, the reaction of the client? Is that something that's a clue to that being a useful or not useful question?
You know, Joe, it's interesting. I have a colleague my dear colleague, she's a professional pianist and she's a piano teacher. And for her doctoral thesis, she worked with professional musicians and using solution-focused coaching. And she often talks about this one participant or client who came in, and my friend Angela, she was pretty sure that this client hated every minute of it. So she was feeling like, oh, this is not working. And then what was so interesting is at the end of, it's amazing how much guts she has. If I feel like this client is hating me, I wouldn't necessarily ask this, but Angela did. She said, so on a scale of 10 to 1, how useful was this session? 10 is really useful, totally worth my time. I have some clarity and all those things. 1 is complete waste of my time. Where would you say? How can you ask somebody who seems to hate you that question? And the client looks so displeased. And she's like, she even grunted. She's like, she's like I would say it about, yeah, it's at about like a 10. So then Angela thought, okay, you misunderstood.
Yeah.
I got it.
Like, no. The good end of the scale is the 10. So she actually rephrased it. You misunderstood my question because you clearly hate it. She didn't say this, but good end is the 10. So she asked again. So good end is the 10. So where would you say? And the client is like looking so pissed off. I would say about 10. So then Angela is like, what? And she said, what was useful for you? And the client was just talking about this, that, and still not even a hint of smile. She is leaving her office so grumpy, and she's saying, thank you. She just left. And I was telling Angela, I wish we have a videotape of that. Because if we were to look at body language as a separate language, then it's going to tell a very different story.
Yeah.
But the way that we look at what's happening in the interaction, body language is not a separate language, but it's just a visible act or visible way of communicating. And there's some audible way, and they always go hand in hand. Just like how I'm making this movement, as I say hand in hand, I do this. So if I do, they kind of go hand in hand. I mean, it doesn't look right.
Yeah.
So understanding that they somehow add to the client's meaning, but it's not really necessarily separate from what they're saying, is how we actually approach visible utterances. So I think that's one way of looking at it. And, Joe, as you talk about it, I also remember somebody who really cared enough about, who took seriously this, calling of therapist, being a therapist. She asked me one day, she said, Haesun, I'm terrified of being a therapist. And I said, how so? And she's like, because I can say one wrong thing and it might actually ruin the client's life. Mm-hmm. And I thought, wow, what a, responsible thing to think. And then I told her well, you got to get over yourself. Our clients will know if that was not useful. They're going to just, throw it away. But even if it was, we are questioning about was this useful, they're going to make good use of it. So I told her to, you know what, get over yourself. You're not that important.
Oh, wow.
I love it.
I love it.
Haesun, you're right up my street.
I should. That's definitely the kind of thing that you would want to say.
Yes. Haesun's fueling me right now. That's what's happening. Be prepared for our conversations tomorrow, Joe.
Yes.
You've stalled, Taish.
Okay. I'll be back in any minute.
Actually,
Yeah.
she's
Joe,
good.
you froze it.
Yeah, Joe froze on us.
Oh, was
Joe
it me? I
froze.
thought it was you two.
Yeah.
We're all
It was
freezing.
Joe.
I'm so glad that I have these fantastic ladies with me.
It's
I'm
actually you.
really conscious of the time, and I just want to hasten.
Go for it, Tara.
I'm just really interested to know what's really inspiring you at the moment. What have you got your teeth into that you're really inspired by?
Oh my, what a small question, Tara. I was just, somebody asked me the other day that, how did you become like such a superwoman or something? I'm like, what? And I thought about it because it's such a weird question to think about. And then I actually told that person, I said, well, I became capable and very competent because I felt like I had no one to rely on. And they were so disappointed. It's like they were thinking about there will be like some grand motive of saving the world. And I'm thinking, no, I had to fight hard because as an immigrant living here, taking care of my family, I'm the one who's speaking the language. So I actually I thought about what drove me here. And there's nothing spectacular about it. It's just people doing their everyday life with a bit of more attention. I think that's what actually inspires me, the details of what people do. And I sometimes think about my dad and I were doing renovation. I don't know if you have done any renovation of any size in your house. We started out thinking, half a day, like 3 months later.
Yeah.
And it was my bathroom that was like inherited with this house. And this is like at least like 40 years old bathroom. Okay. So you see like hippie, like 67 is hippie, like butterfly all over wallpaper with crazy things.
Sounds great.
Oh my gosh. Right? So we were like stripping off this wallpaper one day. And it was so old that we were taking off this like full-size wall mirror. And behind the mirror, it actually said made in West Germany. So we're like, ooh, this dates back quite a bit.
Wow.
Right?
Wow, yeah.
So we are scraping off all this wallpaper, and then we saw this marking on the wall, which was a little bit creepy. There's a little line and date on it, and it says Terry. I was like, interesting. And we were stripping it down a little bit more, and then right below it's like Bob, and there's a date on it, 1972.
Oh.
And as we take it off, there's this line with dates and name on it. And my dad, like, he's like, oh my gosh. And he just knelt down right beside it, just like touching the wall, like, oh my gosh, the growth chart.
Yeah.
Oh, and that's such a sweet memory, because I always think of scaling as a growth chart. I mean, wouldn't that be weird if you tell your child, by next year, this time, you should be this height? We never do that. Growth chart is the growth you've already made so far. And that's what we celebrate. So I think in our ordinary conversation, when I hear people talk about smallest, tiniest difference that made the difference, I think that truly inspires me so much. So actually, three of you talking about somehow using the quadrant in a useful way, that's already so inspiring, actually. What about you? What keeps you going? What keeps you keep on, actually? Three of you. I would love to hear from. I'm like talking nonstop here. Hello.
It's your
it's about
show,
you.
Haesun. Tara, what inspires you? What keeps you going?
Aisha. Pass it off to Sarah.
Half the book. Oh, conversations like this, and the solution folk of my family, obviously my children and my husband and my mom, you know, all of that stuff. But the solution focused community and passion for SF and you know, I love that, Haesun, what you said about likening the scaling to the growth chart. I love that, and I think it's young people inspire me, and you know, it feels like a gift to have the opportunity to have conversations with young people, to invite them to notice their growth and to be able to co-construct that, you know, and amplify that. It's every conversation I have with every young person, I come away blown away and inspired. So
Yeah.
Wow. Huh.
Definitely, because my journey into this field was, well, again, by accident, really. It was, I've been a delivery driver, I've been a sous chef, I've been a shoe shop manager. You know, all of them paid a salary. They paid my bills, but there wasn't much satisfaction there. You know, that feeling of, yeah, I've done a job, I've paid my bills, but that's about as far as it goes. And then the accident was, I was in a car accident, I hurt my back, so I couldn't do the job I was doing, lifting boxes into the back of lorries. As I was going into the police station, because even though the accident wasn't my fault, Haesun, in this, I still had to produce my documents to say that I was a legal driver, even though I was the innocent party. And on the wall was a poster that said, could you be a mediator between young people who are in the criminal justice system? Don't know why that fascinated me, but I found the number and I went on the training, and it's like Tara says, the going back into schools after years out of education, being shocked by the behavior, but being inspired by the young people. What wonderful, it's a privilege, isn't it? We are privileged to be in that position. So yeah, it was literally a car accident that kind of
know that,
changed
Joe. It's amazing.
my whole view. Yeah. That's what it was. And I loved it ever since. Yeah. Even with the bad times. Yeah.
That's an incredible story. My goodness. Just writings on the walls, like, hey, I'll go with that.
Yeah. Aisha,
Me. Oh, what was the question?
what inspired you? What keeps you going?
you?
What keeps me going? I think seeing the fight in people. You know, seeing them have a light bulb moment. You know, it is worth fighting for. It is worth having hope for. I'm going to wake up every morning and start again if I need to. But it's kind of walking alongside those clients who do have a lot of struggles, but despite that, wake up every morning and keep going. And I know this sounds terrible, and I hope some of those clients aren't watching, but I do enjoy watching them hit a bump on the road, because then I like them to overcome it and learn ways of overcoming it. So next time the bump isn't as deep. And learning for themselves. So I know that sounds terrible, and I don't mean it in a bad way, but it's, come on, you can do it. And it's a bit like what Haesun said, get up, carry on, suck it up. This is life. But that inspires me because I learn so much. I draw energy from their strength. And that, and also working with Joe is beautiful.
I can see how it might be barely tolerable.
It is brilliant. I'm going to read something that Jonas Wells wrote. You all blow me away. Thank you, Jonas. I'm your favorite. I am so happy to be listening. If you could see me, you'd see a smile on my face and tears in my eyes.
Oh, Jonas.
Jonas.
It has been a wonderful conversation.
Yeah.
Really
Thank you.
has.
I just can't wait to meet you.
I know. It's going to be brilliant.
We need to have a big party
Well, see, where would we hold
in
it?
Enfield.
It just come to our office, guys. We have wine.
So you have enough wine.
We can buy crates of wine.
Sorry, I don't do wine. I do whiskey. So hey.
Hey, sir.
Oh shoot! It's live.
I will match.
We
I
won't
will
say
match
anything.
the whiskey. We won't. We're not judging. I will match the whiskey with brandy. If that's
like
okay.
Thank you.
Brandy. Well, I can drink brandy. We'll have brandy. Joe can stick to his wine. But we are actually at the end. So I'm just going to reel off our FBS chats for next week and then say goodbye here. But do not go anyway when I end the broadcast, so we can say bye-bye behind the scenes. So next week, I've got to look at my calendar. Sorry, I'm not going to lie. Next week, we have brilliant Kate Walker and Emma Holdsworth, who are professors at Coventry University, and they've helped us write a perpetrators program or a participant program because we are non-judgmental. So that's going to be very interesting. Years of experience in working in domestic abuse and supporting perpetrators and victims, participants and victims. Then on Wednesday, we have Jesper Christiansen, who I love, and I love his beautiful wife as well. And on Thursday, she needs no introduction. We have Eve Lipchick. No introduction needed. We have Eve. Yeah. So, I mean, I've got to say in advance, I love you all. Haesun, Tara, Elliot, Chris, Emma, John Hendon, Owen, who you're watching, Jonas. I love you all, but not as much as Eve, so I'm really sorry. But I'm letting you know now.
We'll let you on.
Well, you just have to get to know us, I guess.
I love you all. I love you all, but you are all 9s. She's a 10.
She's a 10, is she?
All right. Because without her, we wouldn't even be here, people. So next week, Thursday,
Actually, very true.
Eve. She's amazing. So any last words from you guys, and then we will say goodbye here and carry on a quick conversation behind the scenes. Let's go with Joe first.
Just thank you for a wonderful, wonderful hour. What a beautiful end to the day. Thank you, Haesun, for joining us. And Tara, as always, thank you so much. You're always really supportive. And the whole community is supportive. And tonight's just reinforced what a beautiful community the SF community is. So thank you.
Yeah, and just to add, Haesun, thank you for sharing your beautiful and inspiring stories, and particularly your stories about your dad's really touched my heart. So thank you.
You know, I think for me too, actually, really, I watched that Christmas Singles. People, if you haven't watched it, you have to go there. Watch this crazy concert. I love it. These people are rock stars. And I'm so happy to actually talk to you about your work a little bit. I can't wait to get to know your work even more, deeply. So thank you so much for inviting me.
And what Haesun has forgotten to say, which she really wanted to say before we went live, is that Aisha is really playing the drums. So just so you know, that's what was good about it.
So we're going to have a concert, aren't we? When we can all
live
meet.
Yeah,
you're going to do a live concert.
Solution focused concert.
Yeah, and we'll have Jonas Wells, Guy, we'll have our Matt, we'll have all the other Rob Black, all the musicians, Mark McCurgo, all of those people, and
I can play the tambourine.
The rest
of triangle.
Haesun and I will do something while Tara's on the triangle. I mean, this is going to be a massive party.
It's going to be mega
in Enfield.
As long as you serve whiskey, I'm there.
Yeah, well, brandy, whiskey, gin. We can provide you with anything that works. But yeah, so everybody, will see you next week. And Haesun and Tara, please do not press any buttons. Stay there. Next week, Monday at 8 p.m. Take care.
Bye.